Hi, welcome back to the channel. Bit of a sore throat. Hi, welcome back. I just thought this was another video of me rambling on. As I said in the last video, if you're new here, I said in the last video I wanted to do an outdoor video. Unfortunately, the weather is not permitting. It's just thick of snow. Yesterday I was out for like 2.5 hours, just shoveling off the driveway, so I can't really do an outdoor video today because it'd be a bit pointless. But I did think it gives me the perfect opportunity to do a video about something that I have been thinking about for a while, and it's something that I think does kind of resonate with most of us, particularly young people, people my age and a lot younger, in the late teens, early 20s, and it's about how, because in the last video I spoke about how not letting failure hold you back, and that is something that is really, really important. And I think the other thing that is equally as important is not so much failure, it's someone getting disheartened within themselves. But especially when it comes to looking for work and jobs, in whatever circumstance. Not necessarily just modelling or anything. Again, it can cover a whole gamut of things. And when you say, maybe if you're watching this, you're working a normal job, or you have worked regular, I'll call them regular jobs, because the work I'm trying to go into with the modelling, for example, wouldn't be classed. It's a substantial state of work, but it wouldn't be classed. It's not the norm. Not many people do it. It's not something that most people think, oh, I'm gonna become a model. It's not like what I'd class as the stereotypical avenue that a lot of people go in to get jobs. The trades, particularly, are like the main thing that kind of spring to mind when people say about normal regular jobs. So there is all, what I'm doing, I suppose you would class as alternative work. Particularly doing YouTube, again, it's very early days, but it would be classed as an alternative kind of avenue for work, as opposed to the options that are given to you. And what's made me think about doing this video was yesterday, with the snow being as bad as it was, many places, workforces, there's a person I know who works in a retail store, and they were hardly making. Actually, no, I've got a better example. Many places were forcing, many taxi firms were forcing to pay like £100 due to the snow to take people home from work, and other examples being that many of these places weren't closing down even when there was hardly any custom. This had to be open full time, which I understand to an extent. I'm not that naive. I understand that places are still going to be open, but at the same time, it really makes you undeniably notice that many employers don't really care that much about their actual employees. Now, a lot of you might be watching this and be like, you've just worked that out. You know, it's like that's news to you. And no, it isn't that it's just occurred to me. I've worked normal jobs. I've worked in retail. I have worked for normal employers. But in instances like this, with with little things like that, you really get an insight into how kind of an employer's mind works and how they really don't care what their staff or what their employees have to go through. They really don't. And this is why I believe so many people my age and people younger are choosing to opt out of the normal 9 to 5 work. Because they have seen their parents, they've seen maybe their grandparents go through this system for 40 odd years or more, 40 plus years, and kind of get nothing in return out of it. It's kind of like, well, you just keep your mouth shut, you keep your head down and you get on with it, and that kind of attitude, which I personally don't think is a completely wrong attitude to have. But at the same time, it's not a religion. It's not dogma. You can question these things. And I think a lot of people my age and younger have kind of seen their parents not question these things and just do it without actually really thinking, do I want to do this? Is this really what I want to do? And they kind of for example, the last job I worked in was in retail, and it wasn't a terrible job. It was, in many ways I've got like a debt to it, in that if I hadn't of been working that job, because I was still looking for other work while I was working that job, I probably wouldn't have sent off to a model firm. So in many ways, if it weren't for doing that, I'll probably, things lead into other things. I probably wouldn't have done that. And it wasn't a terrible job in that, the staff, many of the staff were very, very friendly. It certainly isn't the worst place I've worked at by any stretch of the imagination. I've worked at much worse places, and everybody was friendly. Everyone seemed to get on with each other, and there was little kind of quarrels between people, but nothing major. And and it was, you'd be working 7-8 hours, 4 or 5 days a week. And, I think so. Whenever I've got a job, a real, a normal job, it's kind of always the same thing. You get it and you're really excited when you first get this job. You're like, oh yeah, I've got this job. I can't wait to get stuck in and do everything. And then I think by the second or third month into it, you're kind of like, oh, okay. That's when you start getting kind of a bit disheartened with it. After with me, it always seems to be the second to third month in, I'm kind of like, okay, I've got to get up now. I've got to go into, and you get yourself up and you get out and you go and do it. But I was always honest with myself, and I was always very honest from day one when I first started working. In any of these jobs, there is no way I could do this for life. There's no way I could do it. Every job I've ever had, regular job, I always knew to myself there is no way I could do this for the rest of my life. I couldn't do it. And that's not me being, many people, some people might say, oh, you're just weak, or you're just this, or you're just that. No, I think it's brutal honesty with yourself that you couldn't do this all your life. Some people can. Some people are, and all power to them. dissing people who can do that. You know, if you can work that and do that for 30, 40 years, my hat goes off to you, because I couldn't do that. And I think there's a lot of young people who kind of look at this and think, I'm not doing this all my life. There's other things I want to do, things for me, besides work this job for 30 years. But unfortunately, we live in a climate that's kind of like, well, you just should be grateful for that job in the first place. You shouldn't be worrying about doing something else. You should be just glad you've got this job now, not worried about anything else. And I think with that, this grind culture, there's so many alternatives now to other ways of work, or making things work for you, that the 9 to 5 work is kind of outdated, I believe. Now, that might sound very naive or immature, because I understand, it isn't outdated to everybody. If you've got children and a mortgage, you're going to work whatever you can. You haven't got that freedom of choice that you have if you haven't got children and you haven't got a mortgage. Then you have got more freedom of choice, and that's kind of, I think, always been the way. But it's how people are kind of shamed if they are not working a 9 to 5 job. There's kind of this stigma about it that, well, you're not doing anything, you're not working. And I have worked since the first job I had was when I was 18, because I went to college like many others. That was the thing you did. I mean, it was compulsory when I left school to go into college. There was no kind of choice about it. You had to, what you either did sixth form, or you could get an apprenticeship, but that was much harder to get than going into college. So a lot of my friends went to college, but it wasn't really taken that seriously, if I'm being honest. When I was at college, it wasn't like, oh, I'm here to pursue what I want to do in life, because I hadn't got a clue at 16, 17. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I hadn't got a clue. And I think most people, again, are in that. I think when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, you don't know what you want to do when you grow up. I think if you do, you're very lucky. I didn't. So you go into college and you're told that it's here that you're going to, whatever you do here will probably determine what you do in the rest of your life, and all that. So you have all that kind of chat. And, it's coming out more and more now that many people who go through the college system, there isn't a job at the end of whatever they do. There isn't a job there. So, again, not to call it a big scam or con, but that's kind of what it is. But for me, I wasn't that hurt by it, because it wasn't taken that seriously. It was just I just went there and I'd be goofing off with my mates and having fun. That was really what college was about for me. Because I think, when you are 16, 17, 18, it is about having fun and not about working yourself into the ground. And I think a lot of young people should be having fun at that age, and not just worrying about what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years. I think that whole mentality doesn't really get you in. I mean, I don't worry now at 26 what's going to happen in 5 years, or you just, what happened, just go with it. And that might, again, some people say, well, it might, you do have to worry about certain things. Well, of course you do. But at the same time, what will be, will be. And I think, stressing needlessly about things, especially when you've got that freedom like I have, as I know a lot of young people have. And you have that freedom to pursue other things besides just working a 9 to 5 job and all the rest of it. And so, and this is from a standpoint where I have worked 9 to 5 jobs, and they're not terrible. It's not awful, it's not the worst thing in the world. In some cases, it can be a very satisfying thing. I mean, I remember the last job I was at. I'd go out at 9:30, finish at 6. I was doing 8.5 hour shifts, and I would walk there and I'd walk back, and there was something really gratifying and the satisfaction from doing a 8.5 hour graft, and walking, and thinking I've just done an 8.5, and there is something really, really gratifying in it. So this is the other side of the coin, where you do get something. All right, you might be working for penance, and so you're not going to get on with everybody in your work team. But aside from all that, I do think there was something gratifying in doing a full day's graft, and knowing that you've just, because a lot of it was physical work. You'd be carrying things and loading stuff onto trolleys, and you'd be on your feet most of the day. And I think that, again, that is a satisfying kind of work, more so than sitting behind a, I was going to say sitting behind a computer then, but as an office job, I don't know how anyone does that at all. That would just completely fry my brain, just sitting for like how many hours a day behind a computer. I do think there is, in doing physical work, there is something gratifying about it. But again, I'm not saying that everybody should do that. That was just the last job I had. That was what I got from it. There was something quite gratifying, and about doing a full day's graft, but not for the rest of my life. And this is kind of the important thing I want to talk about, is that it's one thing doing that job for a limited amount of time, but to do it for the rest of your life is quite another thing. 30, 40 years working the same job in I can only talk about retail because that's what I've done. Doing that for that length of time, again, if you do it, all power to you. My hat goes off to you. But I mean, those people I was working with who'd been there 20, 30 years, even I think one person had been there 40 years. And I'm like, how could you do that? But at the same time, you look at them with an element of complete disbelief and not can't understand it at all. And then on the other hand, you look at them with almost like in a sense of awe at these people working the same job that length of time. And I think I don't know about a lot of people, but I certainly would be working there and I'd be like, I couldn't do this. I don't think I could do it for 5 years, let alone 20, 30 years. Again, I haven't got a family to provide for. They may have when they started out work, I don't know. But again, that it would just be amazing to me that that somebody could do that. And many of the young people who I was working with, because there was people younger than me there, there was people in their late 18, like early 20s, and they'd all want to pursue other things. You know, many of them, it seemed a lot of them were going to university. A lot of the like younger people, the people who was like in their late teens and early 20s, wanted to go off to university and do things in university and etc. And again, as I said in the last video, follow your dreams. Just go for it. So I completely get that. Why the younger people, like the people who are like in their late teens and early 20s, wanted to go off to university. I completely understand that. But the university system kind of gets slighted by people who are all about normal work. But I completely say, whether it works or not, follow whatever you want to do. There might not be a job at the end of it. There might not be. And these young people aren't stupid. I should imagine they understand that there might not be a job at the end of it. Not probably, there might not be a job at the end of it. I'm sure they understand that. But surely it's better to have tried and not done than not done at all. And I really believe that, and I'm all for that. And it's like with this YouTube, the modelling, it always comes back to that. This is my 5th video. The 2nd video got views. I don't think the 3rd video did. I don't know about the 4th one yet. I'll check that when I upload this. Where were you? Watch the video. What you people doing? Just check the videos out. I mean, you ain't got to sit through all of it. Just click on it. But in all seriousness, I hope these videos. I hope when people do watch them, that people do actually, take something from them. And again, it's not going to play. Not everybody's going to be interested. Not everybody's going. But hopefully, somebody, or maybe one person or 2 people, may watch these videos and they might get something from it. It might be interesting to them. You can't please everyone, and I think that's really important for people to understand, that you can't please everyone, and it'd be a waste of time trying to please everybody, because that just isn't going to work. So just do what you're doing, and if you like what you're doing, then really that's all that matters. And I wanted to talk about this topic today because I do think it's relevant, because there are so many young people who want to pursue what they want, but still have the stigma of, well, you should work a normal 9 to 5, you should do this, you should do that. And so my mum and dad were never like that. They've never pushed me or pressured me into doing anything I didn't want to do. They've always kind of like, well, you do what you think is right. They've advised me at times and given me advice at times. They haven't just been like, just do what you want. But they understand that about how, because they both worked all their lives, how you can get stuck in that cycle of and it being really hard to break away from. And I think that's the worst bit about it, is that even when I've been in work, I've seen people who don't really want to be working that job. Some of them love it. It's not everybody. Some of them love it, and that's great. And I think if you do enjoy it, brilliant. But I know there has been people who haven't really enjoyed what they're doing, and yet they can't get away from it for whatever reason. Maybe that might be the light went off. There we go. Whether that might be through financial situations, family situations, whatever it may be, they can't then get away from it. And I think that's probably one of the worst things about it. And because I remember someone saying to me once, the job itself, whatever the job is, that ain't the thing that will make or break it. The thing that will make or break it is your colleagues and your boss. Those are the things, and that is really true. That you can be working a job that you enjoy, and it's a decent job. You know, it might not be the best paid, but it's a job that you actually find fulfilling and enjoy. But you may not get on with many people there, or your employer could be somebody who you really don't get along with, and that can make or break the situation. With me, the first job I had was probably the worst in terms of staff and my employment, my employers, in that it was quite a bad place to work. It was at a hotel, and the staff particularly would do the other stuff. It wasn't a big workforce, so everyone was kind of like, he was literally rubbing shoulders with everybody all day. He worked in the kitchen, and many of the new staff there were kind of like set up to fail, if you know what I mean. It was kind of like you didn't really get a lot of help, and you was kind of like thrown in at the deep end, which I do think can be being thrown at the deep end. I do think can be a very positive thing in doses, in the right circumstances. I think when you're being set up to fail, as I was, then it's not such a positive thing and it's more negative, and that was what was happening. But it was a great place to cut your teeth, and I think that's when you can kind of cope with the adversity, then you build your character, and you can go on, you can take what you've learned from that to the next job or whatever else you do. So it was great. I think if it had been a place where everybody got along and everybody was best friends, that would have been great. But then you go to the next job, and that may not be the case. It's harder to cope with. So it's all pros and cons. It's all swings and roundabouts. But it's something I wanted to come and talk about anyway. Again, hopefully people will see where I'm coming from with it. Because I think a lot of people in this situation of wanting to do what they want, but scared of saying that for the stigma of people saying, oh, well, that's unrealistic, and all the rest of it. So, you know. With the modelling agency, I said I'd always update. The third agency contacted me on Thursday, and they say they'll be getting back to me within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So then that will coincide with the second agency wanting me to apply for them again in February. So it'll all probably start coming together, fingers crossed, in February. So we'll have to wait and see. But I just wanted to come on and share this video and kind of like, just as I call it, talking out loud. I just like to put the camera on and talk about something that I've got going on in my head. So to anyone who watched that video, any views, thank you. Anyone who watches, most appreciated. And fingers crossed, the next video will be an outdoor video. I hope it is. Hopefully the snow will have cleared up by then. So we'll have to wait and see. So cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.